given people enough time, and I believe we have a quorum.
Okay. Okay, well, then let's get started and people join us. That's fine. Like Eric said, Chief Fruitnick couldn't be here, so he's asked me to chair the meeting as his designated alternate, sorry. And like Eric said, this is also my first meeting, so bear with me. Let's get the meeting started. And if Lupita, if you could do a roll call of attendance, that'd be great.
Member Raven is absent. Member Olson,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Yes.
Member Miller,
Present.
Member Larson,
Here.
Member Evans,
Here.
Member Lewis. Looks like he's absent. Member Nigel,
Here.
Member Valdez. Looks like she's absent. Member Vega,
Present.
Member Saylor,
Here.
and Member Oneto on behalf of Chief Fruitnick.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Today's meeting is being held telephonically pursuant to the governor's executive order number N29-20, which was issued on March 17, 2020. The order allows governing bodies of local agencies to hold their meetings electronically, provided that members of the public can also observe and provide public comment electronically. Just a couple of guidelines. Other than CCP members, all lines will be muted and unmuted by the moderator. And CCP members, if you wish to speak, just push the virtual raise hand button or say out loud chair, and I will acknowledge you and move forward with your comments. We will have public comment after each agendized item. And with that being said, that brings us to item number 2, which is an action item. Consider approval of the agenda. Lupita, is it possible to pull up the agenda? If not, no worries. And has everyone had an opportunity to read the agenda, and are there any modifications to it?
Eric, I'm not able to share my screen.
No worries.
Oh, that's okay. Hold 1 second. Okay, it should be good now.
I think Chair Neto wanted to go to the first page of the agenda to show the items and then seek a motion for approval.
Thanks, Phil. Yep.
This is Karen. I'll move approval.
All right, that's the first. Do I have a second?
Miller will second.
Thank you, Chief Miller. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Member Raven.
Aye.
Member Olson,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Member Miller,
Aye.
Member Larson,
Aye.
Member Evans,
Aye.
Member Lewis, I believe he's absent. Member Nigel,
Aye.
Member Valdez, I believe she's absent. Member Vega,
Yes.
Member Saylor,
Aye.
and Member Oneto.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item number 3 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the June 14, 2021 CCP meeting. If we can pull those up or scroll down to those. Has everyone had a chance to look over those or any modifications? Give everyone a sec. If not, if anyone wants to make a motion to approve.
Miller will make that motion.
Thank you, Chief Miller. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, thanks, Dale. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call vote again, please?
Member Raven.
Aye.
Member Olson,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Member Miller.
Aye.
Member Larson,
Aye.
Member Evans,
Aye.
Member Lewis is absent. Member Nigel,
Aye.
Member Valdez is also absent. Member Vega,
Yes.
thank you. And Member Saylor
Aye.
and Member Oneto.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Okay. Takes us to item number 4, public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the CCP on subjects relating to CCP business and not otherwise on the agenda. Speakers will have 3 minutes. Lupita, are there any public comment for items that are not on the agenda?
Yes, we have Lupita T.
Okay, go ahead, Lupita.
She needs to unmute herself.
Okay, thanks. I was waiting for the unmute. Good afternoon, members of the criminal justice system in Yolo County. I just would like to thank all of you. I was unable to attend the last meeting that you had. I just came the last 15 minutes, but I heard good things and just wanted to thank all of you for investing in our mental health system and mental health care, and also for putting more of a focus on substance use and treatment and finding creative ways to address the needs of the most vulnerable citizens in our county regarding to incarceration rates and lowering recidivism in YOLO. And also I wanted to ask for an update. Just personally, I am very interested. It's been about a year since we had the demographics and data presented regarding race and social justice in the town hall that was had by the supervisors last year in July. And I still don't see any data regarding demographics from the district attorney's office. And so I just wanted to put that there on the table. It's been about a year now and still curious as to some of that data and information and wanting an update and just, I've been looking out and keeping an eye on it, and so just curious as to what's going on with that. And the transparency, they were the only aspect of the criminal justice system that I was aware of that did not present that data. And so I just, wanted to let you know that people are still waiting and the public is still curious. And although we cannot make these meetings every time, we're still keeping an eye out for that. So just looking forward to getting that information from the district attorney's office and working with the transparency in our communities, and just, putting that out there that would be a really great way to establish good relationships with that transparency and providing that data that's very much needed in order to guide and advise a formation of a more just criminal justice system, and start thinking about transitioning towards more reformative action in our county, which is a lot of what the voters and the constituents in YOLO want. So just putting that out there. If there's any way I can get an update, Francesca, if she's easier to access for you guys, I'm sure that she would also be curious to know. We would really like to work with the district attorney's office in helping to guide and implement plans towards investing more in our communities in a way that's towards social justice rather than incarceration, and providing more input and advice to not just the DA's office, but to other offices in the county that are affecting the prison pipeline. So we definitely, as voters, want a more just transition in the criminal justice in Yolo County. So thank you.
Thank you, Lupita. And Madam Clerk, do we have any other public comments for items not on the agenda?
There are no additional hands raised, Chair.
Chair, this is Jonathan Raven. I know we normally don't respond, but I could, if you'd like, I could provide an update that might be helpful for Lupita, if you'd like, if now's a good time.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so Lupita, that's a really, really great question. And the DA's office is 100% focused on data and transparency. And I'm not sure why the stats aren't up there, because we're very fortunate to have a really excellent data transparency data system. So we're able to pull probably better data in terms of race and disparity than any department in the county. And right now we're more transparent than any DA's office in the nation. And that's because of the program, which you may or may not have heard about, called Measures for Justice. It's our Commons transparency portal, where we partnered with a third-party nonprofit out of Rochester, New York, to basically set up a portal where anybody, our office or the public, can go on and basically pull with all sorts of different filters data from all the way from cases coming into our office from law enforcement agencies to how they're resolved at the very back end and everything in the middle. And I was thinking as you brought this up that it might be nice for us to do a demonstration before the CCP and show everyone how it works. But we'd also be willing to do the same for you, because once we show you how to use it, you can pull all the data. And we found some very interesting data. We found that there definitely is disparity in some areas more than others, and we don't necessarily know why that is, but it is something that we are very aware of, and we're looking deeper into it. And we also feel it certainly needs to be addressed because we don't want that in our county. It's definitely a problem. We also have been having, I believe, weekly town hall meetings where you can participate and ask questions and listen. But certainly for you and Francesca and anyone else, we would be very thrilled to we could do a Zoom presentation for you to see what the program looks at. What's different about ours than there's maybe 5 or 10 like this in the country. We're the only one with a third party that basically holds the data. And they're a nonprofit criminal justice reform group, which is focused on data. So we're not controlling the data. So the data can't be cooked because they have it. And so we can connect if you'd like, and we can set that up, and we'd love to show you that. And anyone else. And also before this CCP, we'd be happy to present sometime in the future. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. If there's no more public comments, that takes us to item number 5, which is member announcements. Do any members of the whole CCP have any announcements they would like to share?
This is Jonathan again, and I just want to piggyback on what Lupita was talking about, the mental health diversion program. I want to thank this board for voting to approve the funding. And just to let you know, our work has already begun. We had a meeting with members of probation and the public defender's office and the DA's office last week to try to figure out what this program is exactly going to look like and how we're going to help, as Lupita said, that underserved, most vulnerable population, and try to decriminalize those individuals who are committing crimes as a result of their substance use disorder and mental illness. So we are moving, and we're looking forward to bringing on the staff that the CCP will be funding. And I think we're very excited, and I think we're going to have some success if we can look at mental health court, addiction intervention court, and see the success there. I think we're going to have some success in this program too. Thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any other member announcements? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Probation does have a quick announcement we wanted to share. We're having our first community meeting for public input on the status of the JDF and potential alternate uses should the board decide to close it for detention of youth. The first meeting's on July 31st with more info to follow. There's no other member announcements. That'll take us to item number 6, which is receive presentation on CCP budget policies, provide feedback, and consider actions as needed. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Eric Will, CCP analyst, for more info on this. Eric?
Great. Thank you, Will. So hi, everyone. Eric Will, there's another Will. Eric Will, CCP analyst. Lupita, if we could just bring up attachment B from the perfect, and we can zoom that in a little bit just to focus on the top. Perfect. Thank you so much. So today staff has a relatively brief presentation on the budget policies that have been discussed over the last several months by the CCP through the CCP budget ad hoc. Really a lot of great ideas floating around from a lot of different places. And I think at this time, today's opportunity is a discussion for these budget policies as part of the discussion of moving the CCP forward. And so really, I think the best way to think of this is this is not necessarily a staff recommendation. This is really just a collection of ideas and concepts that have been previously discussed through various mechanisms of the CCP as we look to develop this initial framework that would be eventually adopted into the CCP's bylaws so that we can codify this process moving forward. And so really, this purpose is to help the CCP in building this framework as we move ahead. So as we look toward next year, the next 3 to 5 years, and as we're looking to align with the CCP strategic plan, really addressing some of the issues that the CCP has seen over the last several years in trying to develop this budget, getting the budget completed on time, and then really making sure that we're aligning with the strategic plan. So just a few quick points before I get into the bulk of this presentation. Really today, the plan would be that staff will present these general concepts that you see before you here on attachment B around budget policies to begin the discussion. Then the CCP members would discuss and contemplate these policies. We'll receive any public comment or any comments from so this would be CCP full membership as well as the executive committee. And then at the end of this meeting, what the plan is, and please let me know if I need to clarify this point, is that we're looking to vote on conceptually if these ideas make sense or not, and if there needs to be any changes to what's been presented here or not. And so by no means is this the final step. We would still need to come back at a later meeting, looking at potentially a special meeting in August, which we'll discuss at the end of the meeting. But that would be the meeting where we would look to finalize and adopt into the bylaws. So today is really more of a discussion. I know I had a couple of questions about some of the content in this document, which I'll get to in just a second as well. But this is a discussion today for the CCP to go back and forth on how do we look at these different various areas. And then once we get to these discussion points, if there's agreement on a piece, then voting to conceptually approve that to move forward, where staff would work with county council to develop the appropriate language for adoption into the bylaws. So with that little hefty language out of the way, I think there's just one piece I wanted to clarify. If we could scroll just down to the bottom of this page, Lupita, thank you. Just that very last, under the treatment and yes, so there's just a statement about inclusion of the county alcohol and drug administrator in terms of voting. So I just wanted to clarify that at this time, there is no staff recommendation that we would be changing any voting structure of the CCP, whether that's through the executive committee or through the full CCP membership. I know that was a little bit confusing in the way that was written by staff. I think rather the way to look at that is that from the discussions of the CCP budget ad hoc, as well as the general CCP, it's just looking to make sure that as we're developing any specific proposals or looking to spend monies, if they're related to experts or subject matter experts within a field, just contemplating to make sure that we have a chance to discuss with those folks, but that doesn't necessarily need to be a vote. I just wanted to clarify that. There was a couple of questions on that. And so with that, we'll just jump into the rest of the attachment. And at the end of my quick presentation, I'd be happy to take any questions. I anticipate there's a lot of discussion around the various pieces of this. I recognize this is a lot of information, but it really is information that we have been discussing throughout this entire period of developing the budget. So if we could actually scroll back up just a little bit to the top, Lupita. Thank you so much. Perfect. Perfect, thank you. So what the plan is today is I'll just quickly run us through each of these pieces. So the way that staff has broken this out is to try and break it into chunks that made sense at the time based on what the prior discussions were. And so I'm not gonna just read the whole thing. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at this previously, but really just offer a high level overview of this and then answer any questions that anyone has. So for the first item, which is the annual review process, in concept, this would just allow the CCP to set a specific for a timeline to devise the budget each year. So the CCP Executive Committee still is the main body for voting on all of these items, but this would be looking to set aside a timeline for the CCP to be developing its budget. Over the past several years, staff has noticed that it can be difficult to make sure that we're staying on top and on track of the CCP's budget. And so that we end up pushing it into the adopted budget in September when this timeline would be to contemplate moving that up a little bit more. The next piece, if we want to scroll down just a little bit, Lupita, just to proposal review process. And that is perfect, thank you. So for this section, just really discusses quickly how the CCP might consider developing formal definitions for treatment and innovation, while also seeking a standardized format for how proposals would be presented to the CCP Executive Committee. So as I think everyone will recognize, this was previously discussed in the CCP meetings as we were looking around at percentage-based budgeting and looking at how to formulate that model. There were discussions about, when a new concept comes in, or as we go throughout the budget process, how do we get a standardized format to make sure that everyone goes through the same thing, to make sure that we're all on the same page about, what information is needed in terms of a proposal. So what will be done with the money? How are we tracking our goals and outcomes? What are the performance measurements that we're using? And I'll have a little bit more on that at the end of this presentation as well. If we could just scroll down to the next page, please. Perfect. So the next piece is allocations, fund balances, and reserves. This section includes language around getting allocations out the door at the beginning of each fiscal year. Furthermore, the CCP would be seeking to, or could contemplate seeking, alignment with the county's reserve policy, and the executive committee would still be responsible for any changes to the reserve policy. So just as the executive committee votes on the CCP budget and any budget policies, that would be the same under this language here in terms of the reserve policy. It is noted here that in terms of individual department spending, if a department should overspend, the language indicates here that the department would need to bring forth their budget and an analysis of why the overspending happened to the executive committee of the CCP. And it's not just an assumption that dollars would be funded. So an important clarification to be made that if additional funding would be needed, say there's a fund balance and a department would need to pull from that, that is something that was previously discussed by the CCP budget ad hoc as something that should be brought to the executive committee for confirmation discussion. And if we could roll down to the rollover process. Thank you. Perfect. Oh, thank you. So similar to the section above, departments would be responsible for rollover amounts in this language and explaining to the CCP the reason for rollover. So many times rollover is a pretty standard operating procedure. Sometimes folks are hired a little bit later in the year, and so there's funds left over from that. Sometimes there's vacant positions. There can be agreements that get pushed back just due to standard government operations. So the language in here indicates that a department with too much rollover, so looking at, maybe it's 20%, 25% more than what was initially allocated to that department for the year, would then trigger a process where the CCP Executive Committee would want to review or look at the department's spending and determine, is there too big of a nest egg that's sitting in one department and we're not getting everything done that we need to get done? Or was a department, did they make a cut to a position that then reflected a budget savings? Just any number of things in terms of how rollover might occur from one fiscal year to the next. Then we have the budget reporting and invoicing. So as discussed during the budget process, a standardized form might be considered for both reporting out of the budget, both mid-year fiscally and at the end of the fiscal year, as well as a standardized form for invoicing. So these forms have not been developed yet, but in terms of looking at these concepts, this was to be brought forth to the CCP for consideration to be considered as part of this budget policy discussion now. So if this were to be conceptually approved and then adopted into the bylaws, staff could certainly then develop those forms and to be approved by the CCP Executive Committee. And then finally, we have outcomes and data collection. So this section likely needs the most work and is likely the most difficult, as discussed with the CCP over the last several months and honestly over the last several years. In prior discussions, the CCP had discussed that outcomes and metrics must be clear and should be reported in a standardized format if possible. I know that one of the big challenges is that because different programs and different positions, though they may be funded by the same funding source, how they operate programmatically or how they're doing their standard operation may be different, and therefore different metrics may be needed to be used or different methodologies. So this language just indicates that the county in the past has somewhat used the results-based accountability or RBA methodology, and that is something that could be contemplated by the CCP. However, the CCP Executive Committee would ultimately need to determine what is best for each of the departments or the CCP as a whole. So if a different process would be needed for treatment or innovation as against to a department, depending on how the money is flowing, then that would need to be tracked in a different fashion than the standardized way of other departments. But in general, just really making sure that it's focused on the outcomes and data collection that can help us progress the CCP strategic plan and move that forward. So with all of that, I will conclude my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions about what's been presented in attachment B thus far. We welcome any CCP Executive Committee full membership public comment on any of these topics, and at this point would turn it over to the CCP for a discussion around these concepts that have been discussed.
And time for a comment, if I can jump in there real quick.
Absolutely, Chief Miller, go ahead.
Just waiting for the chair there to. Eric, you addressed head on one of my biggest concerns, which is the bottom of page 1 and the language in there. So moving forward, if we can maybe change the language, because twofold, it's not just necessarily county alcohol and drug administration. There might be other subject matter experts that can offer input into the discussion, and ICMA votes. If that makes sense to you?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think, I'll just weigh in here because when we talked about this, I actually think the alcohol and drug administrator should have a vote in the treatment when we're considering treatment options or treatment proposals, and that should be highlighted within the bylaws separate from other budget votes. But when it comes to treatment, I think the people that are best suited to vote on those matters are people that have subject matter expertise in treatment, both mental health and substance use. And so that would be Ian and I. So I am proposing something different than what you were saying, Chief Miller.
Yeah, I'd say actually that, and even in our discussions that we discussed that, do we maintain that budget ad hoc committee to review these things? And we were pretty much unanimous that we shouldn't, that it should go actually to the exec board. I believe it rests solely in the exec board. And I would even question the potential legality about that, about including other votes. It seems to me either the entire membership or just the exec board, but not somewhere in between.
And this is Jonathan. So, yeah, I don't know if the statute would allow for that. And I know we were very clear when we set this up that the executive committee solely would have votes on the budget issues. But I guess, and I think for treatment, alcohol and drugs input is critical. But, we could have proposals for victim-related programs through innovation maybe. And I guess would Laura then get a vote for that? We could have proposals for education-related programs. Would Garth then get to vote for that? And I don't, aside from the legality, I don't know where it ends. And it would seem to me that, Ian in this case would be certainly giving his input as we discuss and vote on these issues, and certainly giving his input to you, Karen, which would help advise you on your vote. I just think we wanted to stay clear of multiple individuals from departments having votes on budget issues. So I guess there is more discussion, and Eric had said that it would not be a vote, but I guess Karen is contemplating maybe that alcohol and drug would have a vote. So I guess we need to really clarify how we want to move forward.
If I could piggyback also, my input to Eric there is also ICMA and on the, specifically for treatment, because I also agree with Jonathan about the innovation. We may have subject matter experts that we want to call upon to advise us, but just do that, just advise.
Will, this is Don. There are a couple hands up. Mine and Dale Johnson both have hands up.
Thank you, Supervisor Saylor. I couldn't see it. Go ahead, you're first.
It's in the kind of invisible space there, so I'll try to clarify that. But my question would be to County Counsel Pugledich on the legality of the suggestion that non-members of the executive committee vote on certain matters related to the budget. What's your sense of how that, if that could work, and is it permissible under the statute?
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, it's a hard question to answer because, as I've probably said before in different contexts, the statute governing the CCP and its executive committee really doesn't tell us a lot about how we should operate. I don't think it would prevent the CCP and executive committee from deciding on certain matters. They want to expand the pool of those who can vote, but it certainly doesn't require it either. And in fact, the only voting reference in the entire statute is the vote of the executive committee on the strategic plan. And we've addressed that in our bylaws by saying that that plan and related implementation tasks, including the budget, are the purview of the executive committee. So we're already doing a little bit of independent work to identify how to operate efficiently through our bylaws. And for that reason, I'd say that we could expand the pool, but aren't required to.
So you could do it for the two topics that have been referenced in the conversation so far, innovation and treatment. So there could be, if the committee wanted to, could expand the voting pool for selected topics for selected purposes if they chose to.
I believe so. Correct.
Thanks.
Dale, go ahead. You're next.
Thanks, Will. I would be in agreement with Mr. Raven and Chief Miller. I think it's important for us to take information from subject matter people that have that experience, and we listen to that, but we vote as an executive group. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or points of clarification for Eric? And so correct me if I'm wrong, Eric and Phil, but at this point, do we need a motion to move this for further discussion, at least in concept?
Yes, so I'll take a stab and then Phil can fill in. So I think, go ahead, Chief Miller.
Well, before we make a motion, reference also the metrics. I think it might be appropriate to form another ad hoc committee to try to develop that form and discuss the metrics. Just throwing it out there. Not that I want to volunteer for another one.
So, and I want to take a look at how this was agendized before I said, yes, we can take a vote now. I guess the item does contemplate a vote potentially, although it doesn't require one. We also, though, need to take public comment if there is any before acting.
And
I have
real quick,
additional
Supervisor Saylor
questions.
has his hand up. Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks,
Supervisor
Will. I wasn't sure if you could see it. I see the yellow hand in the white book, so I think that's probably kind of invisible. I only commented on the topic that was that was being discussed, but another couple of topics in the thing I'd like to hear the perspective of the folks. One is about the fund balance and the carryovers, and I think there's some issues, some topics there about allowing individual departments to carry over funds with I think with an annual review, if I read that correctly. And then if there was to be any point during the time when there was a 25% carryover, that there would be a review required. But that just seems, so one question is, I'm not sure if there's an annual review of carryover or if it's only triggered by the 25% level. And I'm a little curious about what the practicality is. Why do we need to allow carryovers if there's not a carry? So that's an issue. What's the purpose of the carryover? And if departments are carrying over funds from year to year, that seems to deprive the committee as a whole of establishing annual priorities that are targeting your strategic plan. So I'd like to hear some discussion by the group about what your intention is with the carryovers, why you're doing it, and why you're not having an annual review of all of them if you aren't. So that's one of the topics. And then the second topic that was presented to me is the look at performance measures. There was a section that had three topics or criteria for considering programmatic changes, proposed changes. And one of them was performance measures. Another was sort of why you're doing it. But I would suggest a fourth item might be relationship to the CCP strategic plan, and being explicit that that's something that the proposals should address. So those are 2 points I wanted to put on the table to ask the committee to discuss.
Okay, I want to make sure, get everyone in the order their hands are up. Supervisor Provenza.
Yes, thank you. I am leery of adding additional votes of subject matter experts. I think those can be relayed through the principals, and kind of gets us into a territory where the recommendations might actually carry less clout with the board if we start doing that. I like the performance measures. One question I have is what happens if someone doesn't meet the performance measures? Have we thought about that? And also I agree with Supervisor Saylor on the amount, the number, and that we've talked about this of positions that are held open, and view that as something we should think about going into the future.
All right, I believe, Tracy, you're next.
Okay, I just wanted to address the rollover concept. I'm in favor of that, and this is my thinking on it, is we spent a lot of time making sure that each department had a percentage-based allocation. And so now I think the next step is to encourage people to live within their means and to account for what we know will be some volatility in the overall allocation we get from year to year. So the thought was people might be more willing to keep positions open, or people might be more willing to be very careful in how they spend their money if they got to keep the savings to plan for that rainy day that might come the next year. But we also don't want departments to, have this very huge savings account with no plan for it. So the 25% top was fairly arbitrary. It's up for discussion, but it was just something that seemed to make sense that, for instance, if I never spend my allocation, the public defender shouldn't be sitting on a $2 million CCP savings account in 4 years. But at the same time, maybe I think next year is going to be a bad budget year, and so I want to hire late. My reward for making that financial decision is then I get to make sure that I can ride out the next year if my allocation dollar-wise goes down, even though my percentage won't go down. So that was the thinking behind the carryovers.
Okay, thank you. And Dale, I believe you were next.
Can somebody, on the carryovers, is that the same for treatment and innovation? Does that money just keep rolling over and rolling over every year? They don't have to return the funds?
The thought would be, sorry if I can address this. If I got, like, for instance, the mental health diversion team, that came out of treatment and innovation. So if I hire late, I'm just talking, and I have a savings account, that doesn't come back to the public defender. That goes back into the treatment fund to be respent the next year. The only thing that gets carried over would be the actual department allocations. So public defenders 4.5%, DA was 4.5%, sheriff and probation are 27.5%. So those are the ones that would be a savings account for the department. But if something got funded out of treatment or innovation and there were savings, that goes back into treatment and innovation to be revoted on for expenditure the next years.
Well, would it? I'm sorry, Will, but just on this, would these carryovers be reviewed by the CCP as a part of the budget process? Yeah, is that a yes? I'm seeing nods up and down.
Yes.
All right. So regardless of whether it's 10% or 25%, it would still come through your annual process. So you would all be able to see and hear the explanations. What Tracy's talking about, all that is of course reasonable. But if you're accumulating a balance, meanwhile the county is appropriating general fund to your department, that raises a question of, well, why are we having these carryovers? So I think if you at least review it as a body, then you would be able to make a determination that it's advancing the cause. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Yes. I can go ahead, Tracy. Yes. So I think the idea is that it really just allows for a little bit more, I think, transparency, accountability on the part of all departments in the annual review process. And really, I think just giving a little more structure is really what we're looking at with the language here. And Will, I did see that Chad put his hand up about maybe 5 minutes ago. I know he's in the attendees. I was curious if he had any.
Well, Eric, I hate to jump in on that, Will, but Chair, but I do want to ask if County DFS is going to be a part of this whole process. I think they have to be a part of this whole process. Are they going to be vetted on all this information? And if Chad had his hand up, hopefully he can weigh in on that.
I just moved Chad over as a panelist.
Thank you, Eric. Go ahead, Chad.
Good afternoon, CCP. I appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts. I do appreciate you updating your budget policies. Moving the process forward is going to be a huge help for our annual budget. There's a few things in the policy that are a bit non-standard, and I would like the opportunity to review and comment. I haven't had that opportunity yet. One that Don highlighted is the rollover. There's another one just wanting to make sure we fully understand and have clarity on the invoicing processes so we can appropriately administer those. And so I think a lot of the content is really good, but want to go back through and provide some comment and recommendation where we may not be in accordance with the standard county budget process. And there may be compelling reasons for that, or maybe we're not in line with best practices. And so we'd like the opportunity to comment for your consideration before you finally do an approval.
Okay, and I do see Jonathan Raven's hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to comment and just, I thought it made sense and agree with what Tracy was discussing and proposing. That seems to make sense as we move forward.
Dale, did you want to comment again, or was that hand still up from before?
Yeah, I'll make a comment on, I know we're kind of just on covering on the treatment and innovation definitions. I think they're kind of a little bit, they're just there, but the goal of the CCP is to reduce recidivism. So I think it's needs to be a part of that treatment definition, that our goal is to reduce recidivism, and it's got to be evidence-based.
All right, I'm scanning and I'm not seeing any more hands. So we're hearing a lot of modifications to attachment B. So my question going forward is, do we need a motion to move forward in concept, or do we need motion to make modifications?
So we will need public comment first before we can move forward with that.
All right, thank you, Eric. Lupita, is there anyone for public comment on this item?
Yes, we have Lupita T.
Hi, Lupita, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Onateo. I just wanted to support what Tracy Olson was saying about having subject matter experts of voting pool expansion for the innovation and treatment. At least clients or people receiving services or are intimately familiar with those areas. For example, it would be a great disservice to clients in the mental health community to have people that are not familiar with mental health or former or receiving clients for mental health services and other services not to have a voice in how that money is being spent or how it might be lacking or how it can be improved. I think Tracy had a really good point. I also wanted to thank you guys for thinking about performance measures, because it is very important to determine where you're at in order to establish where you're going. And so that can't be understated how important those performance measures are. and goals and gap analysis, identifying portions of certain programs that are not meeting deadlines or meeting certain goal or mission requirements. And and I also wanted to second what about the evidence-based reduction of recidivism that Dale Johnson had mentioned. Thank you for mentioning that, because sometimes people have like a dreamer mentality where they want to idealize or romanticize reforming the criminal justice system. However, in reality, when you're actually going through, there's certain things that really need to be addressed that might not be, the public might not be in alignment with, but it should be done because that's what's best for the community. So the closure of the juvenile detention center is one of the examples of that, you know, where you had the sheriffs and then you had Supervisor Provenza and Supervisor Saylor pushing to shut it down, and the community wanted to keep it open. So I think the evidence-based reduction of recidivism is very important, and really analyzing the actual needs from the communities. And so that goes back to subject matter experts, having people in the voting block, especially for innovation and treatment, that can not only just help guide and advise, but also put in that democratic vote so that clients receiving services in these different departments have a say in how that money is spent, because they know how it's being used and they're directly affected or they're directly benefiting from these services. And so I really just would like to promote including that in the strategic plan and really making it a point to have all these things supported in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Lupita. Madam Clerk, are there any other public comments on this item?
There are no additional hands raised.
All righty. I don't see any other members with their hands raised. So at this point, do we need a motion to move forward in concept?
I believe Tracy's hand just raised.
Oh, sorry, I spoke too soon. Go ahead, Tracy.
I guess I just have, what does it mean to say go forward in concept? Does that just mean we're gonna figure out the details? Because I'd like us to get to a point where we can get this voted on and behind us, maybe at the next meeting. So is that what we do? Is that is that the track we're on?
Well, on the agenda, we're actually going to talk about a special meeting for next month that Eric was going to talk about, and so that could be part of it.
Sure.
This is Jonathan. I'm trying to narrow things down, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the only issue where people have differing opinions is this issue on whether all these other committee members get to vote on various proposals, including treatment and I guess victims and CommuniCare. But everything else, other than that, it seems like we're all in agreement. So I'm just kind of throwing this out there for discussion. Should we, if we want to move forward, it seems like we can move forward on everything but that one issue, which we can address at some later point. If that's...
Will, I think that Chad has asked that he have an opportunity to provide a review and advice pertaining to the financial matters that the language includes. So while there's may not be stated, may not be a matter of conflict or controversy, it still would be advisable to have him take a look and see if there are differences from what the standard practices are, why, and just be mindful of what they are.
So that seems well advised. Certainly Chad's opinion is always welcome and important. I don't know why we have to vote on anything that in concept or not. We're just gonna bring this up at a later meeting, hopefully the next vote on it.
Yeah, it does sound like there's enough modifications to possibly not take a vote right now and to move it for a further discussion, but also like Tracy said, to put it behind us at some point and vote on it, move forward. Does that sound?
I just
Go ahead,
want to
Jonathan.
make one other comment here. I know for me and some others, you know, I don't know who wrote the proposal, but, you know, when I was asking staff, you know, where did that come from in terms of adding a non-executive voting member to vote on budget, you know, no one really knew. And then it was implied that it came from the ad hoc committee, and John Miller and Laura said it absolutely did not come from the ad hoc committee, and that was not discussed, but somehow it ended up in the proposal. And I thought that was a little strange in practice, and I don't know how that happened. It doesn't seem like it was the best process there. Just want to make that comment.
I see Chief Miller's hand up. Go ahead, Chief Miller.
Well, no, I was just wondering if it would be appropriate to follow up on Jonathan's issue and then my thing that I brought up about an ad hoc committee. Would it be appropriate to make a motion to call for a vote on that last paragraph of page 1 about the language, changing the language as I previously had suggested? And then would it be appropriate to have a second motion about the ad hoc committee for the outcomes informing that form?
Thank you. And I see Mark Nigel's hand up. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was just before John made
We're not picking you up, Mark. Sorry. It's a really bad connection. Are you able to chat your question? Type your question in the chat. I think we've lost him. Sorry, Mark. We're not picking up anything. Okay. Phil, at this point, it sounds like we have quite a bit of information. Some would like to move for a vote, but also Chad would like to review it later, look for a little guidance from you. But at this point, it does sound it'd be more prudent to have a discussion offline before we make a vote. But I'll leave that to you.
I'm not sure what the discussion offline would be. I think the only vote today would be on what to bring back for consideration in August, so that Eric has sufficient direction to put something together in writing for the CCP to take a look at. Eric may already have heard enough to feel he has direction, in which case I think we would just be looking to the CCP for or the executive committee. I guess it's probably the executive committee, since this would be changes to that portion of the bylaws. If there's agreement with them bringing something back for consideration, excluding the language on the alcohol and drug administrator, which it didn't seem like there was support for. But I don't want to do too much to formulate the motion for the group. There are a number of different options, I guess, is my real point. I think Eric may simply be able to take what he's heard and come back with something for consideration in August, if there's interest in having a special meeting without any, further or more explicit direction.
And Phil, that was my question. Is it appropriate to make that motion? I'm ready to make the motion on those 2 items that I mentioned.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that.
Okay, so Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion that we send it back to Eric with the recommended changes to that last paragraph of page 1 to indicate that other subject matter experts may be brought in to advise on treatment and innovation fund requests or proposals to enhance the process and ensure alignment with existing county and CCP practices.
All right. Do we have a second?
Chair, this is Dale. I'll second.
Thank you, Dale. Clerk, can we please do a roll call vote?
Actually, before we jump into that, I just want to say, I believe this will be a vote of the executive committee. If anybody disagrees, I think this is your chance to speak up, but this is focused on changing provisions of the bylaws that relate to the duties of the executive committee, and it's how it operates basically. So that's why I believe it's a vote for them to consider.
Okay,
Right.
seeing no opposition, Member Raven? Member Raven?
I'm sorry, is this, I lost you for a second. Is this to vote on Chief Miller's motion?
Correct.
Aye.
Member Olson?
So the motion is just, I don't even understand what the motion is. The motion is just send it off for changes, extra voting language.
Chief Miller made a specific change to the existing attachment B, and that, if I heard correctly, was changing it from advising versus voting. Is that correct, Chief Miller?
Yes, and to include the innovation fund, not just the treatment fund, and not just the county alcohol and drug administrator, but other subject matter experts that may be appropriate.
So this would be a motion to make those changes, but then still nothing would make those permanent changes. That would just still bring back a new discussion on those changes, correct? Phil, does that sound correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know, Chief Miller, I don't recall, was part of your motion to have a special meeting in August? I think that's a separate issue we need to come back to after the motion, the timing of this.
Yeah, that could be a separate.
Yeah.
I'm just abstaining at this point.
I'm sorry, are you abstaining? Is that right? Thank you. Member Johnson?
Yes.
Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Larson?
Yes.
Member Vega?
Yes.
And Member Oneto?
Yes.
Okay, so motion passes with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 abstention.
And then I'd like to make a second motion, if it's appropriate this time, about forming an ad hoc committee to discuss the outcomes and data collection that is suggested in the document. And coming up with the suggested form or metrics.
So just so I'm clear, the motion is to assign the work of coming up with that matrix to the ad hoc committee. Is that correct, Chief Miller? Sorry, there's a little bit of a connection.
Yes, try to clarify. The motion is to form an ad hoc committee to review the outcomes and data collection portion of this, to come up with the form and possible metrics, the standardized form and metrics that is referred to.
Okay, so you're suggesting creating a new ad hoc committee, not the existing ad hoc committee.
Right. Budget ad hoc committee, I believe, is done and over as far as its functioning. So it'd be a new ad hoc committee.
I would
Understood.
second that.
And we have a second from Tracy. So, Madam Clerk, can we do a roll call vote?
Member Raven?
Aye.
Member Olson?
Aye.
Member Johnson?
Yes.
Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Larson?
Aye.
Member Vega?
Yes.
And Member Oneto?
Yes.
Okay, motion
And so,
passes.
Chair Neto, what typically happens with an ad hoc committee is that we come back at the next meeting with proposed appointments to the ad hoc committee, as well as, typically when the Board of Supervisors creates an ad hoc committee, there's a short worksheet on its scope and duration, all of which is pretty easy to prepare. So those details will come back next time.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. All right, and I think that the next item Eric was going to bring up is the special meeting. We're scheduled to meet next on October 12th, but there is need for a special meeting in August, and I'll let Eric go ahead and propose that.
Sure. So at the request of the chair of the CCP to have a special meeting to finalize the budget process. And so part of that process is the policy that we just discussed today. But I think the second piece of that is actually detailing out the rest of the CCP's budget. So that was, today is the discussion around how do we actually get there. And then at the next meeting would actually be detailing out the rest of the numbers. So we have the broad percentages. We did have the mental health specific proposal, but now this would be the finalization of that process of looking to finalize these budget policies, amending them or adopting them into the CCP's bylaws. And then the second piece actually getting us to the finalized budget so that when the board gets to their budget for adopted, the CCP's budget is ready to go. And that meeting would be August 9th at 1:30 would be in alignment with the standard CCP timing. And if there are scheduling issues, then staff can certainly work around that, but that would be the standard CCP time.
My understanding is we can go ahead and just schedule that. We don't necessarily need a motion or a vote for that. Is that correct, Phil?
Well, technically it's correct. The chair can call a special meeting on his own, but you got the group here to speak to whether they want to come back for a special meeting in August. So might recommend a motion.
Can I get a motion?
Yeah,
I have.
Do I notice?
I'm sorry, who made a motion?
A lot of hand raised, Will, currently. I don't know if you can see them or not, but it looks like.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were giving some other information. Let me go through the list of names. Karen, go ahead.
Well, not to muddy the waters, but we're asking for a special meeting of CCP next week. We started scheduling a meeting to review the sequential intercept map and some of the data from Kevin O'Connell next week, and realized that we had invited everybody from CCP. So we have to call it a special meeting because otherwise we're violating Brown Act. And so maybe we can amend this motion to include 2 special meetings. The one for next Thursday, I can give you the date and time, as well as the August meeting, because we do think it's important for all of the partners to see what we found with the data and to help us determine next steps in terms of the sequential intercept map and where we're headed. So that meeting is currently scheduled for next Thursday, July 22nd from 2 to 3:30.
Go ahead, Tracy.
I just wanted to put this on the radar. We had said that we would open up the treatment innovation money for people outside of CCP to submit proposals. So it could be community-based organizations, it could be law enforcement, et cetera. So I don't know when the time is to determine what that process is going to look like, but at some point we do have to advertise that we're accepting applications, figure out what that application looks like. I'm hoping it's a one-pager and it's short and sweet. But I don't know if that's something we can put on the radar to discuss for the next meeting, August 9th. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before I forgot.
Okay. And I saw Supervisor Saylor's hand up.
Thank you, Will. I was simply going to encourage the newly established ad hoc committee when it's appointed to include consideration of strategic plan along with what Under Sheriff Johnson referenced as evidence-based practices when they're looking at ways of criteria for reviewing proposals. So that was a minor point, not on target for your discussion of your meetings.
Oh, thank you, Supervisor. And Dale, go ahead.
Do we want to actually have some ideas forwarded to Eric? I mean, so we can, or do we just want to lay everything out here as far as, moving forward? Because I do think that and looking at the innovation definition too, it's kind of, generic. So are we going to make suggestions to that, or are you okay with adding things, Eric? Or I don't know how this can move forward without everybody trying to vote saying I like that or don't like that, or or you're just going to take examples of what we talked about today and just kind of incorporate what you've into this attachment B. So I'm just opening to the rest of the panel. If what we're done saying today and that's it, Eric's going to make modifications, or will he be willing to take some more information, moving forward?
Dale, I'd suggest if you have specific input for Eric, provide what you can today in the public meeting. I'd rather have that happen than him trying to assimilate input provided outside the meeting from different board members. But, additional input can happen next time and thereafter until we feel as a group that definition is what it should be. But as much as possible, that debate and discussion ought to happen here in the public meeting. It may not technically be inappropriate to send input to Eric, but it, begins to get a lot of discussion decisions happening outside of a public meeting that would probably be better to take place here.
Well, I believe that underneath that innovation definition, we should have something. I'm sorry. Under the innovation definition, it just also needs to provide just more strict performance requirements, basically to determine if the innovation was successful, I guess. So we can add something to that on the innovation part of it, Eric.
Good thing.
All right. Anything else, Dale?
I'm sure I'll have some things for the next August meeting.
Okay, I want to hit Chief Miller's got his hand up. Nope, that's an old hand. Okay, so it looks like we will need a motion to have 2 special meetings, one for July 22nd from 2 to 3:30 p.m. and then one for August 9th. Oh, Ian has his hand up. Sorry, Ian.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the outcome comment, because I guess my interpretation of the document as it was written was any proposals that come forward that are reviewed and funded, whether they're treatment or innovation, would require that outcomes be tied to them based on whatever the outcome ad hoc group that it sounds like is going to get formed is going to determine. So I think that would apply to all of them. And it's, maybe to under Sheriff Johnson's point, we want to, put a clarifying line in the outcome data collection section based on what the ad hoc recommends. But I just want to make sure I was understanding that right. That was my interpretation, is that all CCP programs moving forward, we want outcomes tied to, so we can see if anything, whether it's department or an innovation or a treatment outcome will be successful and is meeting the stated goals of the CCP.
Okay, Eric's collecting all of this information. If there's no more hands, can we get a motion for the 2 special meetings, one on July 22nd from 2 to 3:30 and then one on August 9th?
I'll make the motion. This is Karen.
Thank you, Karen. Can I get a second?
I can second. This is Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy. Lupita, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Member Raven,
Aye.
Member Olson,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Member Miller,
Aye.
Member Larson,
Aye.
Member Evans,
Aye.
Member Lewis is absent, Member Nigel. I think he's absent as well. Member Valdez is absent, Member Vega,
Yes.
Member Saylor,
Aye.
and Member Oneto.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes.
All right, thank you. I did want to make one quick correction before we go to item number 7. Earlier in announcements, I had mentioned that our next community member meeting is going to be on July 31st. I misspoke. It's July 27th, and it will be on Zoom, and a press release will follow after this meeting. So that being said, that brings us to item number 7, which is adjournment. Does anyone opposed to ending this meeting? No? Okay, then we will meet back on July 22nd and then again on August 9th before our next quarter meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Good job, Will.
Thank you.